Pizza rolls, Chia Pets, and Perms. The 80s live on. This is the focus group.
They're all business, except when they're not. It's the focus group with Tim Bennett and John Nash.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the focus group. Tim Bennett here, as always, with my good friend and co-host, Mr. John T. Nash. We're in the week of celebrating our country's birthday. I don't even know what year, 250-something years, maybe, John. I don't know. What is it? Do you even know what it is?
No, I just am been counting years since 2015 and then the golden escalator. So
yeah, there you go. So
the years, how many years of Trump? Like 6, 7, I don't know.
Right. So if you all had we hope you all had a nice 4th of July break, and probably many people had the week off. I was laughing, John. A memory had popped up on social media. You and I had, I think it was 11 years ago or something like that. We're driving cross country for Volkswagen in one of those diesel Beetles. And I remember it popped on the news. I think we were in Oklahoma, or leaving Oklahoma City. And the news flash was that San Diego was supposed to have this huge fireworks display, hundreds of thousands of people, and it all went off in under 60 seconds. Remember, just one big blow up.
The barge. And, it was a barge.
And I was telling friends about it, and somebody remembered it, but we went, there's a YouTube video of it. It's hilarious because, and then there's newscasters talking about it. It was supposed to be a 17 or 19 minute display, and it all went up in less than 60 seconds. It's like big boom in a cloud. Everybody had to leave.
That particular day on the road trip, we checked into our absolute favorite hotel on the entire trip, which is in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
We parked, we showered, we had these gorgeous rooms. You said keep the amenities. I forget what the...
Yeah, they were very expensive. Began with a B. Of course, now I can't remember. But yeah, they were...
You said keep the amenities. And then we saw the Oklahoma City bombing memorial, which is pretty amazing, by day and night. And we went to a restaurant to grab a bite to eat. Star Wars was playing on the TV. I don't know if you remember this.
That's the
and
burger
you made
joint.
me sit with my back to the TV. You said, you sit over here.
Right, because you'd have watched it. Bulgari, those were the
Bulgari,
products, Bulgari products. It was a magnificent hotel.
Yes.
So Oklahoma City surprised us in a good way. Albuquerque surprised us in a whole different way. But other than that, I had big hopes for Albuquerque, and it just didn't pan out.
They were dashed, right?
So anyway, man. So that was that.
That's a good memory of the 4th. So before we roll on, we got some fun letters from listeners and some interesting information. So first of all, we have our listener Rob down in your neck of the woods, down in Rehoboth. And remember a week ago or so, I mentioned for my pick from Deep Discount was going to be a Criterion Collection movie called Fox and His Friends. It was from the 70s. Well, Rob and his husband Mike have seen the film, and he said, I recall seeing Fox and Friends in the 70s around the time it came out. It must have been in D.C. I recall that it was kind of strange, but it was the first gay film by a gay actor and director that I recall seeing, and it was probably the first of its kind. So he's going to buy it and revisit it. And then he mentions another, he said, there was a theater in Atlanta they went to, and they saw another movie called You Are Not Alone. This is from the 70s as well. It was about boys at a boys' school in Sweden. And he says, frankly, I think it would never appear in a theater if it came out today because it might be considered kiddie porn.
Oh, my God.
He also commented on our conversation we had about Banana Republic. He buys all his clothes there, and he has a credit card that somehow hooks points into it, so he rarely pays full price for the Banana Republic clothing.
Wow.
And then he closed with a comment about a Camp Rehoboth event, and he had a picture of a beautiful ukulele. I mean, they're kind of cool when you see the wood grain and stuff. That I guess he plays Hawaiian luau music. So that
he had started. I think during the pandemic, he started playing the ukulele, and he does some recitals or concerts, I guess, whatever you call
Polynesian dance music.
Yeah,
okay,
so it's very cool. But I love the fact that people. I thought of doing something. I was going to learn how to do all kinds of things. But similar to when you and I were going to be fluent in Mandarin Chinese when we drove cross country.
On that same road trip that we ended up in Oklahoma City.
I think we learned ni hao is the only
ni
thing.
Hao.
Ni hao.
And we had another letter from Stephen up in British Columbia, and he's been a fan of the show for a long time. And remember you and I were briefly talking about a book called The Shipping News?
Yes.
Yes, and he said, he goes, Tim was not a big fan. I liked it, and he said, fun fact, the book was written by Annie Proulx, Proulx, and she also wrote the short story Brokeback Mountain.
You're kidding me.
No,
That's
I know. It's
funny.
pretty cool, right? And then Stephen also wanted to recommend a podcast for us. He said, I'd like to recommend a Canadian podcast. I know, in capital letters, you both would enjoy. It's called Under the Influence by Terry O'Reilly. It's all about the advertising and marketing world. Terry does an excellent show, well-researched and produced, great writing, often hilarious, and at times touching. So this listener, Stephen, studied marketing in college, and he ended up in a career in human resources. So
Is it Terry? You said Terry O'Reilly? Is that what it was?
Terry O'Reilly and it's Under the Influence is the name of the podcast.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, maybe I'll send you a link later just so you have it. But maybe this is a segment called The Mailbag.
Well, it's good, and I'm glad people are contacting us because we certainly miss the call-in we used to be able to have, because it was great to be able to talk to the listeners directly, and they would oftentimes correct us, which we needed. Sometimes you misspeak or you forget something, or as we move along, you sometimes, or we would sometimes maybe mispronounce things, which were always funny. The listeners kept us on the die, as Big Edie would say. But no, I like that. And it's funny, I've noticed a few other people. We've been around 15 years doing this, and we started on Sirius XM or XM radio originally, doing this business focus show, and stayed pretty tight in that lane. But I've noticed a number of people now that are doing business, LGBTQ business shows, and I don't know. Should we go back to strict business?
Well, Tim, every time I listen to one of them, it's like, here's how to save money, here's how to set up a living will or a living trust or something like it's business. Tim and I were literally interviewed recently on Gay BC's Happy Hour. That was for the week of July 2nd. If you go to gaybc.com, our interview's up there right now. We were talking about Subaru and LGBTQ advertising in general. And, it's just one of those things where we were talking about the fact that we used to have callers, right? Like interactive listeners and things like that. And someone asked us about the show, and I realized that we talk about like marketing and advertising and business between our personal stories. So like many times something will trigger a memory, and Tim will say, well, here's an example of a bad interview, or here's a resume that came in. But you know what I mean? It's not like we're Jim Cramer doing stock picking.
Right. Here's how to open a franchise.
Yeah. No, we're not interested in that.
So without further ado, Mr. Nash, what caught your eye this week?
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
I have a really simple, dumb one.
Uh-oh.
Maybe it's not so dumb, but, I love the things that are found, and I have an idea about this one. So a woman goes to a thrift store, and I don't know how much they don't tell you how much she spent for this, but she bought someone's old recipe box. You know those note cards, handwritten? And she said it's someone's grandmother's recipes for sure. She struck gold at her favorite shop, and she shared the photo. Then they had a bunch of idiotic information about thrift stores and how you could find the Declaration of Independence, one of those magical stories. Yeah. But at the end, they go back, and she said the woman actually began making some of these recipes. And with so many recipes to go through, the original poster shares that they had barely scratched the surface, but some standout recipes so far included this woman's version, whoever had this recipe box, their version of the Rice Krispies treats, which we all know, banana bread, and Reuben chicken casserole. This is a new one on me, which was dubbed some excellent comfort food. So that was the story, and the reason it caught my eye is if it were me, I would turn this into something.
I'd make it a cookbook.
There you go. I would go back to front and either make almost every recipe. Like, I think that would be like Julia and Julia. Remember that movie about
do a blog about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Or do a video blog, or do the best ones and make up a name, whoever this person was, just like grandma something recipe box, and turn it into a business, right?
You know what I thought it was, John, before you started the story when I looked at the picture. So if you're watching on our video, you'll see a picture of this recipe box. You know what I thought it was?
What?
It looks exactly like the recipe box that our Big Edie was given at her birthday party.
Oh, my
From
God.
Lois.
You're right. From Grey Gardens, right?
From Grey Gardens. And I looked at it, I thought, oh, my God, is this the Grey... We know Little Edie had or Big Edie or Little Edie had any recipes other than cat food and pate with a little lemon.
Ice cream, too. Some ice cream.
And butter pecan ice cream and Pepsi and whiskey. That would be the The Grey Gardens cookbook. Maybe we should do a Grey Gardens cookbook.
Oh my God! Everything would be a combination of one of the and Ritz crackers would be in
Ritz
there too,
crackers,
right?
Yeah. Donuts that don't give you indigestion.
So
The
so
Wonder
happy
Bread,
Fourth,
Wonder
that's
Bread
what
for the
caught
cat
my
too.
eye.
Yeah, for pet food would be Purina cat chow and Wonder Bread.
May we recommend Grey Gardens for everybody who's not on board this Grey Gardens bandwagon? Tim was introduced to it at our house.
I know. Thank
15
you.
years ago. He sat at the. I have never. If you've ever seen a movie with Tim, if you've ever had the pleasure of going to a movie theater with Tim, he'll probably fall asleep within 5 minutes of the movie start. Wake up when the credits are rolling and say it was the worst film he's ever seen, in air quotes, because he didn't really see it. But this one, Grey Gardens, goes on the DVD player. He starts watching, edge of the seat the entire time, and laugh. And he got it. He got the film. It's first viewing.
And you can't watch the HBO version and think
No.
you watch Grey Gardens. So you've got to
No.
watch the original from the Maisels. You can get it at deep discount or our friends at Critics' Choice. Either place
Well, it's
you
on
can go for it.
Criterion now.
Criterion, right?
Yeah.
So that's where you get it. So mine is a simple one too, and I laughed about it because something you and I never did, and I don't think either of us could do it now because we're hair challenged. But so the headline is, this infamous 80s hairstyle is seeing a resurgence in young men. So it said, perms or the permanent wave have been a fixture of American culture since the late 19th century and reached peak popularity in the 70s and 80s. The style went out of vogue in the 90s, but has since found a new audience, largely thanks to the innovative new products and rising popularity of K-pop stars and influencers on TikTok, where videos could be found under the hashtag perm, which have garnered over 2 billion views. So some of these K-pop stars and some of these new processes that they have with perms, a lot of young men are doing it for ease of maintaining their hair. Now, I put some ridiculous pictures up. I know you love Justin Timberlake. Remember when he had a perm? Look at that.
Oh yeah, Justy. That's our
curlies.
pass card. We love him.
Yeah, but not with those curls, would you?
No, I'm not a big.
Yeah, cut that
but
right off.
Who is that? The record? Who is that? That famous producer?
Phil Spector.
Spector?
Yeah, look at that. That's how he went to court. So if you're watching the video, we've got
It's
pictures
hysterical.
of some perms. But so they said that young people have particularly changed young men are particularly adopting this hairstyle. Now, they said the perm category in general is still shrinking. So it's declined 35% between 2017 and 2022. And it only accounts for about $60 million in the overall hair care market, which is really tiny when you think of it. But they said Gen Z and this rise of K-pop and the K-pop stars that are doing kind of this wave or curl, they're not calling them perms anymore. They're calling it the new wave, a new wave hairdo. So so if you're interested, you can get the Korean wave or the Hallyu, that's what they're calling it. And they said, unlike the American bouffant of the 80s, some of these treatments can go unnoticed because it just has a very natural look with a gentle whisper of curl. So there you go. Perms are back.
I think some of the guys you chose to showcase in that photo, some of them look pretty good in the perm, don't you think?
Yeah, well, yeah. They look like
But you gotta
hairband
have
boys.
that face and the bone structure, and they're like models practically. So of course,
like mops, like a mop. You have to have thick, moppy hair. Richard would do all right with that. No, you and I, my hair's
Tim,
too
look,
thick.
there's
no
nothing to
perms.
perm here. Like later on, I'm taking the number one, whatever it is, and getting back to my almost bald look. So,
Or like Tina Turner. She had a moppy wigs, right? So
speaking of Tina Turner, the other night I just had a hankering to watch the beginning of the movie Mad Max Beyond
Oh, my
Thunderdome, where she
God.
plays Auntie Entity, who runs Bartertown. It brought back a lot of memories because Greg and I, this is back in the days when you could go to a theater in Times Square and they had a smoking balcony. You could sit
my
up in the
gosh.
balcony and smoke. And we used to go see this movie like once a week for 5 weeks in a row or something crazy like that.
how funny is that?
Anyhow. So I believe we have a business birthday now, correct?
Yes, we do.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
In honor of the 4th, we're moving right along on today's show, so we hope you enjoy it. Today's business birthday is a guy named Jeno Francesco Paulucci, born July 5th, 1918, He died at 93 in 2011. He was an American food industry magnate, investor, philanthropist, blah, blah, blah. He started over 70 companies, but was most well known for his frozen food company, Bellisio Foods, as well as developing Geno's pizza rolls. And I think more famously, the Chun King line of Chinese prepared foods. So he grew up in the Iron Range in Minnesota. He was from an Italian family. His parents emigrated to the U.S. They went to the Iron Range up in northern Minnesota where they worked in mining. And he had worked at a grocery store for a while, Paulucci. And so he said he had this motivation to develop Chun King Chinese foods because he said he liked Chinese food, but he found it to be too bland. And he thought Chinese food could benefit from a little Italian spice. Can you
Love
imagine?
It. Yeah.
So so in the 40s, he took he made some lo mein and some Chinese food. He's really, he's the first person, they said, who actually did mass market of prepared Chinese food you could buy at the grocery store. He made a batch of it and he canned it, and he took samples to supermarket executives to try to convince them to stock it on the shelves. So at one of the grocery stores, the story says he recounts a story in a 1972 book where they talk about kind of the foods that he had helped invent for the American palate. He said he opened the can at the grocery store, and to his horror, at the top of the can included a whole cooked grasshopper.
Oh my God. You're not kidding. Oh,
So he said the supermarket executive didn't see it because the can was toward him as he opened it up. This is a can of Chun King lo mein. He said, fortunately, I had opened the can in such a way that the lid did not face the executive, and only I could see the contents. So they said, Paulucci thought quickly and said to the executive, boy, this looks so good, I'm going to have some myself. Took a spoon, dug in, and ate the grasshopper.
oh my. You're this is true.
Yeah.
Okay.
He says it didn't taste bad. He said, in fact, they actually roast deep-fried grasshoppers and sell them on the street in Mexico. So he said it wasn't too bad. He then, so after the grasshopper was out of the can, he then turned and gave it to the supermarket executive who loved the Chinese food with Italian spice. I'm going to have to go get some Chun King now.
You know,
And-
Tim, it's not even cultural appropriation. It's just kind of cultural butchery.
So he said he offered the can to the executive who sampled it and absolutely loved it, placed a large order. So it says that Paulucci's version of Chinese food was heavily modified to better cater to the food preferences of the European immigrants and some Americans whose ethnic origins would include the addition of Italian spices. Said his company became so successful selling canned chow mein and chop suey that President Ford once quipped, "What could be more American than a business built on a good Italian recipe for chop suey?" Because when he praised Paulucci at the White House. By 1962, Chun King was bringing in $30 million in annual revenue and accounted for half of all the U.S. sales of prepared Chinese food. He sold in 1966 Chun King to the Reynolds Company, R.J. Reynolds Company, for $63 million. In 1985, he developed pizza rolls early on in his career, and then in 1985 he sold those to Pillsbury. He said it was his biggest regret selling the pizza rolls. He said, "I should have kept the pizza roll. It's something that'll be around. It's something that'll damn near live forever." He had gone to he had moved back, so he was living in Chicago. He had moved back to Minnesota, and he had opened a factory, and he started selling Geno's frozen food, which specialized in frozen Italian food and pasta. And he marketed under the Michelina brand, which was named after his mother. And they said that he then ended up moving the whole operation to Ohio. And they thought that was not a... they thought he had, what's the word I'm looking for, had done his community wrong, I guess, because he moved all these jobs out of Minnesota to Ohio. And they said that his whole thing was supposed to be about growing communities and growing, cities with people by putting manufacturing in there. And he said he violated his own commitment to the people of Minnesota by moving from a town of economic hardship over to Ohio. But he said Ohio gave him a better deal and financed low interest rates. And his quote was, "I'm a businessman. I'm not going to say, oh, gee, I'm a nice guy." And so he died, as I said, in 2006, he died in 2000, what was the year?
11.
2011. But in 2006, they already started contesting the will. His daughter was left a huge trust fund, over $100 million. And they started fighting over guardianship of that back in 2006.
Oh, my God.
And they said there was still a court battle going on over his estate after he died. But he invented over 70 different foods plus, but known for this Chun King and the pizza
I remember
rolls.
Chun King because it sat on the shelf next to La Choy.
Yes. La
But La
Choy makes
Choy
Chinese
had-
food. Swing American.
Yeah, so guess who had the more memorable jingle? I don't remember the Chun King. Did
I don't
Chun King
either.
have a jingle?
I don't either. We have a picture of Chun King that were the kind of the original. It doesn't have anything. No.
No.
But I'm
I
going to look
remember
to see if they still have the brand. I'm guessing the brand's still around, don't you think?
that was something when it was introduced. I remember my parents taking baby steps towards La Choy or Chun King, and it was kind of a meal in a can, right?
Yeah. Well,
Which
they asked him
for-
what his business philosophy was. He said to cut out the middleman and take advantage of waste.
Ah, okay. All
What do
right.
you think that means?
Cut out the middleman and take it. Well,
Said he was
yeah.
credited with building one of the first national brands of frozen pizzas.
Hmm.
He also took advantage of the growing acceptance of frozen food in the United States. He said, where there's a microwave, I need to have a product.
This guy, I like this guy.
Yeah. So,
Good business birthday, Tim.
yeah, so that's our business birthday. So our shop talk today is almost is like a business birthday, but it's somebody who died.
Yeah, it's like a
So
business
it's
death.
It's a, but I thought it was interesting because I'll
love this.
just read the headline, then John and I will discuss it. Joseph Pedott, 91, dies, made Chia Pets, as seen on TV, a sensation. Now I'd sent you notes earlier about this, and I listened to a video about him, a bio, where they called him Joseph Pedott, and then in the New York Times, which I think probably is a little more credible than the Yahoo video, I saw that they said his name is pronounced Pedott. So it's Joseph Pedott. But
Okay.
he created the Chia Pet, or the famous jingle with the breathy announcer, Chia.
Chia. Yeah.
And so they said that he was, so he just died on June 22nd in San Francisco. He was 91 years old. He, the origins of the Chia Pet, they talk about how it started. And he was at a Chicago home show and had asked this guy at one of the thrifty drugstore chains what his best-selling product was. And it was something they couldn't quite understand or figure out, this terracotta thing with the chia seeds that were growing. He ended up smartly getting the rights to that, and almost like the pet rock or some of these other crazy fads, ends up growing this thing to really be a part of American culture, right?
Yep. It was started as the humble Chia Pet, but it grew to Chia anything. In fact, if you're watching on YouTube, behind a picture of him, there are Chia Bob Ross heads. One of my absolute, because what a perfect thing, right? So anything that had that Chia look, so in this case, it was Bob Ross had like an afro or a perm. He had a smiley face. He could make Chia out of anything. And in the article, they actually show pictures of like a dog vest that is
Right.
like that you could put on your dog that literally is a chia, like so you could snap it on the dog and you could walk around with a growing plant on it. I just think that the brilliance of this was this idea also that they wove into the obituary about as seen on TV.
Right.
This whole category of products that they would advertise on television and that you could actually like order 1-800 number or whatever. This is actually long before QVC and all the big home shopping networks, right?
Right, and social media where you could just get things anytime. So this was our kind of, remember the Floby, that thing attached
Floby.
to your...
Yeah.
But the Chia Pet. I almost bought for somebody the Obama Chia Pet. But I wonder
Yes.
what happened when they grew. Did the thing eventually just die, or what?
I'm curious. Do you remember how it worked? Did you ever do a Chia Pet?
Well, I did. We did in college. You just rub the seeds on, and then
The
it
paste.
would grow.
Remember, it was
The
like a paste?
right?
Yeah.
On this terracotta thing, and it was originated in Mexico. But once again, and people laugh at me. Our friends Howard and Patrick are always like, "You're always telling John something we missed." But there would be, this would be one we missed, right? We would say, "What's
We
the
totally
one
missed
seller?"
this. I would never have come up with
You would have never let
green-
me invest money in this.
a green schmear that you would put on a terracotta thing that would grow into something.
John, it's going to work. It's going to work. Nah. Can't see it.
And look, it's Chia everything. Even like Guardians of the Galaxy, Chia Groot, Chia this, Chia that. He leaves behind a legacy that will never be forgotten, right? And hey, at the very best of it, it's an innocent little thing. a terracotta thing with a green schmear that grows. Chia.
Right. And not only did he do the Chia Pet, but one of his other notable successes was the clapper. Clap
clapper.
on, clap off. Did you have a clapper?
No.
We had one. My grandmother had it. She thought it was going to be great because, her plugs and everything were behind the sofas and whatever. And I remember going in, she'd clap, and the stupid thing would be on off. Or if you were laughing somewhere and somebody slapped their knee, the lights would go off. So she unplugged the clapper. But and then Matt had one when we lived in PA, and we'd have the clapper because it was easier to walk into. Instead of walking into a dark bedroom or something, we just clap and lights would go on.
Did you have it for a while?
Yeah, and I liked it. And then it went a little haywire. It would sometimes not work. Sometimes the dog would bark. It might go on and off. It was almost just like any sound. The thing would look like a disco, a strobe light. But I love the clapper. I love the idea that they said it didn't have the success of the Chia Pet, but it was certainly another thing well known. And when they asked him, which I thought was interesting about what his guide to success was, he said repetition, right? In terms of marketing. Repetition
Okay.
works. He said, so, how did you do, why did the Chia Pet and the clapper work? He says, repetition works. So, it's the whole
Chia.
Chia. Right. Clap on,
clap off.
Clapper. Clap off. Right? We remember them.
Oh, yeah. Well, hey, look, you and I also remember I wish I were an Oscar Mayer wiener. That is what I always want to be, because if I were an Oscar Mayer wiener, everyone would be in love with me. And we heard this when we were like 7 or 8 years old.
Or two all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onion on a sesame seed bun.
Sesame seed bun, yeah.
McDonald's.
La Choy makes Chinese food. Okay. So there you go, folks. We hope you enjoyed our little, the brevity of our nation's birthday podcast here on the Focus Group. We want to thank you for joining us, as always. It's great that you follow and listen along. If you have any comments or you want to be part of the mailbag, maybe that's a new segment, letters at focusgroupradio.com.
I like that. I like that, the mailbag.
Like the mailbag,
John's got the mailbag.
And thank you for dropping us letters and notes, folks. Quick programming note, keep your eyes peeled and your ears peeled, because September is Criterion Month, and that's when we usually play my game, Pick That Flick, and we give away DVDs and things from Criterion, but that's going to be a little ways away. But before you know it, you'll be snapping your fingers. It's going to be Labor Day. I don't want to rush things, but we find this stuff goes quick. So again, thanks for joining us. Thank you to our partner, Deep Discount. You could get to their site by going to ours, focusgroupradio.com. Click on the Deep Discount logo and start shopping away. As a matter of fact, Tim, I just bought something from Deep Discount. It's a toy.
Uh-oh.
And it's a little astronaut from 2001: A Space Odyssey. There is a story behind it, which I will share later. But anyway, stay safe, folks, and we will see you next week.
It's The Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.